Cybersecurity concerns are ever evolving. OT cybersecurity is even more complex, and it's so much more than just software and hardware. How do you stay on top of it all? Aaron Crow has over 25 years experience with cybersecurity. 15 of those years focused on operational technology across multiple industries, and he wants to help you. Welcome to the Protect OT Cybersecurity Podcast, brought to you by Industrial Defender. Now here's your host, Aaron Crow.
All right, thank you for joining me. Todd, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, a little bit about yourself and your background.
Todd Beebe, Information Security Officer at my current employer. Try to keep that secret. Been doing cyber as well as I can. Been doing cyber for a little over 30 years. Got into it. One thing led to another. Wasn't my plan to do anything in computers. I was planning on going into law enforcement. But just how life goes. Luckily it stuck with me and had a pretty good career.
That's awesome. So what was that path like? So you were actually like going to school and learning for that, and you had an alternate path that approached yourself?
So here's how the story goes. It's like I was in kind of the math classes and other things, advanced math classes when I was a kid. I was the geek. I was trying to do everything I could to stay away from the geekdom, and didn't take a computer class in school. Was planning on going into law enforcement, maybe go to law school. And when I graduated, shortly after I graduated college, one of my friends bought a computer to play like Duke Nukem or some game like that. And I thought, okay, that's cool enough, right? That's not nerdy. That's kind of fun. So I bought a computer. Next thing I know, I was taking it apart, putting it together, helping other people kind of set up their computers, set up a BBS, and then after just a few short years, a company in Lincoln, where I was born and raised, decided they needed somebody that handled their remote access. And since I had the BBS experience, it was kind of a natural progression. And then after that, they said, "Hey, Todd, we're planning on getting this 56K line. Can you go set up this internet thing?" And so that's what I did. And it's like, "Hey, Todd, there's this firewall. Can you go figure that out?" So it was kind of like I was one of the guys on the team was, you just go figure it out. So whatever it was, and I did that for a number of years, where I was really kind of the security guy for the organization, doing kind of, I wouldn't even call it pen test back then. It was just more vulnerability assessments and that kind of thing. But did enough. Got enough experience that I got a job with Ernst & Young. They brought me down to Houston, where I now live, for a role to build their attack and pin program. Right. And from there, did 2 startups, and it's just. But again, it was not in my plans. My plans was to go to law enforcement and to get into law school. So, it's been a great career, and I love it. I try to do whatever I can to get other people into it and teach, and that's just, again, one thing led to another.
Yeah, it's really amazing how careers happen that way, right? It's similar path, right? I went to school for engineering and ended up in this path. I was really good at this technology thing, and it was just something natural to me, and it started out as a part-time thing, and then it turned into this whole long career that I've had. And a lot of the time I was the guy that raised my hand, does anybody know how to do this, or does anybody want to volunteer to try? And I was usually the one that was either voluntold, or I raised my hand and signed up for it because I was like, oh, that sounds interesting, let me try that, right? So a lot of my career was that, and figuring things out. And I got into OT cyber before that was a term, right? We didn't call it OT, there was no OT. But it was the same thing. Like, it was before it was pen testing, and right. Even the path at EY, I spent 5 years as a senior manager there at EY, and same thing. Like, I never saw myself as a consultant or an advisor, especially in like the EY capacity, and PowerPoints and all of the stuff that comes with being an EY consultant was not my forte. But
it wasn't mine either. Yeah.
But I learned so much during that.
Yes.
And I was able to see, and it helped me get into the role that I'm in now, right, as a CTO, because I was able to see not just the technical stuff, but the business stuff and all those other pieces that tied in together that I wouldn't have probably been able to see without being at EY and being in those different, being asked to do different things beyond just my technical prowess that got me to, that one position. It's I don't remember the name of the book, but what got you here won't get you there. Right, you need to be able to do the other things, the soft skills, the presentation, the public speaking, things like that I use on this podcast all the time. That my technical skills didn't necessarily help me. Now, without those skills, I wouldn't be able confident to have these conversations with really smart people. But I also need these other skills as well. So
it's one of those things when you look back, the steps kind of the little pebbles or rocks that are kind of building and built your career. You can kind of see, hey, that now makes sense. It's
right.
When you look back, it makes sense. Because right now, when I look at it, it says it doesn't make sense to me that it wasn't even on my mind. It wasn't a plan. I mean, one of the guys I worked with that was early in technology, he was formerly a welder, but he was one of those guys that had that mindset of, hey, he's the guy, he'll figure it out, right? And I think that's what really started cybersecurity, and a lot of people that I know in cybersecurity that are from that generation were the, hey, you go figure it out kind of thing, because there wasn't really training for it. There was no kind of discipline for it. It was just a part of IT, but it wasn't the typical IT of keep everything up and operational. It was almost try to figure out how could this get broken and try to prevent things, but also detect them. It was, but yeah, looking back, it makes sense. But when I did it, it was like, this doesn't make any sense. But like you said, now I'm more comfortable because I had to go up in front of CIOs at Fortune 500 companies pretty early in my career. It gives the confidence for that public speaking that eventually is starting to even show up even more now today than it showed in my previous years. So that seemed to be a common theme.
Yeah, and you couldn't go to the guidance counselor in high school and him map out the path that a lot of times your career takes. Like there is no path. Like it was left and up and down and sideways and 2 steps back and 4 steps forward. And sometimes you just have to be willing to take a risk and jump off and learn some new skill. And it's just like with anything, whether it's jiu-jitsu or learning a language or whatever the thing is, you have to be willing to suck at first before you can get good at something, right?
I think that's the thing, is you just can't be afraid of failure, right? It's I'll keep failing until I finally figure this out. I don't even think of it as failing. It's just another attempt.
Right.
So I think when people get bothered by the failure, they'll stop before that next step would have got them moving forward. And I think it's just that mindset of, that's why they threw stuff at us. It's like, they'll just go figure it out. They won't stop until they figure it out. That even though there's no expectation of success because they've never done it before. Who brought in a 56K line? Who set up firewalls before? It's like, nobody on the team. Okay, well, just go figure it out.
Right.
So
and a lot of the stuff we do, nobody's done this stuff before, right? We're charting new territory, so it's not like you can find a perfect example or even hiring an EY. A lot of the things that we do sometimes is a one-off. It's something that nobody's seen before, exactly the way that we're doing it. So it's not like you can go find a perfect example of somebody that's done this 12 times and bring them in. So somebody's gonna have to figure it out. Why not you?
Yeah, there's no 200-page manual that's going to walk you through it. It's like somebody else is building the steps on some notepad somewhere, that probably is Excel spreadsheet. It's like they're tracking it down in case they have to do it again. It's like, let me try to remember this stuff. But then the next time they do it, they don't have the list, so they do it a little bit better the next time because they're not hampered by, I just got to find a routine and stick to it. It's no, how can I improve it? It's that mental challenge of continual improvement, I think, is really is key to being a good cybersecurity person.
So what are some of the common or bigger things that stand out for you as far as maybe issues that you've seen maybe in your current role or even a previous role that we're still faced with today? A lot of times in OT we face the same thing over and over and over again. What are some of those things that maybe come to mind for you?
So this one might be a little challenging with the OT stint on or view of this podcast. Mm-hmm. But the OT, I see a little bit of what I seen very early in my career, where it was the IT guys and the telecom guys. There was like 2 closets, And then all of a sudden, Cisco or whoever was coming out with voice over IP, and it was kind of, the writing was on the wall that these things were going to merge, because that's Mother Nature. She likes things efficient, and she doesn't like repetition. And I see the same thing with OT environments, where there's this hesitation of, hey, IT is going to come in and want to do it their way. And what I've tried to find in my career when I've been in environments, and I currently am with OT environments or OT crew, is trying to find that commonalities. Because to me, I tend to not focus as an IT person. I'm a cyber person, no matter what the environment. I mean, I've been in oil and gas, I've been in finance, I've been in chemical. And to me, I think, because early in my career as a threat actor, not a criminal one, even though we won't talk about what I did when I was under 18, but that I was paid to focus on where's the gap. And I still think like an attacker. And to me, I don't look at OT and IT. I look at, there's IP addresses, there's ports, there's probably Windows, there's probably Active Directory. It's like that whatever else hangs off it, I'll get to that later. But if I can master those four things, just get an IP address, get a port open, figure out what's listening, it doesn't matter to me what the environment is. If you can't stop me as a threat actor from figuring those parts out, I'll eventually get to the things that are most important, like SAP or HMI or an engineering workstation. I'll get to those if I can get an IP, get a port, get access to that, get some credentials. I mean, all of those are just common denominators. So I tended to try to focus on common denominators of, hey guys, I know I'm not an expert on this certain protocol that you guys are using, but does that machine have an IP address? Do you know if it has open ports that I can get to without credentials? Or do I need credentials, and are those default credentials? I mean, it's those are the things I focused on as a threat actor. I mean, usually when we did a pen test at Ernst & Young, of course that was early days, within 30 minutes we'd have credentials and open ports and IP addresses. So beyond that, is pretty much starting to write the report of what can we get to that's most important on it. But we were already we were already settled in as an administrator pretty quickly. And so when I talk to individuals, whether it's the individuals on my team that are on the IT or OT side trying to harden the environment, I'll say, this is how you need to think like. I try to stay away from think like an attacker, but think like an admin nowadays. Like your very first admin or your new hire admin, they're going to try to enumerate the environment because they got to figure it out. They're going to try, they're going to be doing the same things as an attacker that lands on a box. Now I got to figure out what's going on. So they have to do enumeration. They have to find some credentials, but it's not. I'm trying to stay away from IT, OT, telecom. Because all the networks are eventually going to merge. IP, when IPs came out, or TCP/IP came out. Banyan Vines and all those other things, Novell, you know what I mean? As soon as Microsoft decided to, I think it was TCP/IP or something, bundle and get an IP address on those Windows boxes, it was kind of the beginning of the end of all the other just networking solutions that were trying to put a different network, we'll call it OS or network, what's the word? There's a word I'm looking for, but TCP/IP is really what's driving it all, whether it's driving the internet, driving companies internally, driving OT networks, and anything that hangs off it will be able to be accessed by a threat actor if there's not the right controls in place. So that's where I focus to try to secure something, is what are my attack paths, right? What's available to me to get from point A to point very important, right?
Sure.
That's how I think of things. So
well,
and stay away from IT versus OT.
Yeah, well, the thing about that though, right, is definitely I've been on both sides of that table, right? I've been in the IT seat. I've been hesitant to let me in, and I've been in the OT seat where I didn't trust the IT people, right? But to your point, it's the same technology. And as an asset owner, when I was working at a power utility, and I was the OT person, right? And it was my responsibility for all the power plants and all the OT technology. It was the insane thing was that I had 42 something power plants that I was responsible for, and my team of 6 had to support all of those. And in my tech stack, I had firewalls and VMware and Windows and a patching solution and antivirus, and I had that times 6 at every location, and I had 6 people to support all those physically, geographically distant locations, and I had a team of 6 to do everything, and they had to be an expert, not an expert, but they had to be good enough in all of those capabilities, where when I looked across the aisle at my IT counterparts, they had an entire networking firewall team, and they had a VMware team, and they had a switching team, and they had an application team, and they had hundreds of people that were supporting each of those things, and all they had to dedicate was on Active Directory or Palo Alto firewalls or VMware. Yeah, they were specialists on those things.
Right.
My guys had to be good enough at all of those things, while they weren't experts in any, nor could they do. There was not enough time in a day for my small team to do all of what I would want a normal admin to do on normal preventative maintenance in these environments, just because of outage windows, and I can't patch, and they're in different locations, and I have to send them in a car to go out there because we don't want to do it remotely, and like all of these reasons. So we're constantly fighting, whack-a-mole. We're supporting things. We've got cyber issues. We've got patching, all these things in a small team, where the IT team has more funding, more resources, more training, more people, like everything about it. But OT is really where the crown jewels were, especially in a power utility.
That's where the money's made, right?
If the plant goes down, the IT stuff doesn't matter.
Right. Well, everybody can send each other an email, and we can check into SAP to say we're not making money right now because OT's down, right?
Exactly.
I agree. What's funny is I've thought that same thing, that kind of the newer organizations and as OT environments get mature, they look identical except for some of the devices that hang off them to an OT network, whether it's Cisco gear, VMs, virtual, IP addresses, Active Directory, and that's the attacker's bread and butter, right? Yeah. When you think of a threat, that's what they know. They're not going to, in most cases, I haven't heard of too many organizations where they have an SAP environment that's getting hit as soon as somebody gets in. Sure. They're just going after the Windows devices, especially now, since it seems like what really changed to me is 2017, when those new all those new vulnerabilities that certain NSA had got released. From then, I think it was around almost that exact same time that ransomware became a thing. Is because now they figured out, hey, if we go after these devices on just some ports they're listening on by default, boom. Because before that, it was like MSO8067. That was the only one I remember, because as a pen tester, that was the bread and butter. There was no other really major, if you had this and you could get to a machine that was listening on a port, that was it. You were on it, right? Yeah. And since those releases, it's got the threat actors thinking of if we can find more of these. And now there's a lot more of those vulnerabilities where it's just unauthenticated. If you can talk to the device, you can get on the device as system. So it's just that thought process of 2017 to me is when the game changed, as far as how, no matter what environment you're on, if you got Windows on it, then the threat actors, this is what they're going to go after. They don't ransomware SAP. They don't ransomware engineering workstations. They run on Windows, yes, but they don't ransomware PLCs. Right. They ransomware the core, and then you can't. Then everything else stops. Right? Yeah. It's that's, to me, if we get more people thinking like that, they'll think, okay, we really have to bind together IT and OT, bringing together the expertise of how to secure that core infrastructure, that everything that's custom for that environment, whether it's some business that doesn't use SAP, but they have other applications or tools that they use that are unique to that organization. They still have Windows, they still have virtual, they still have core TCP/IP networks, all the devices that hang off. You know what I mean? It's getting that mindset of, hey guys, we need to work together, because the threat actor doesn't care what network they get on, whether it's IT or OT. It's where can they make money, right? Yeah. And if they can move from IT to OT because there's no segmentation, they'll take that out too. They're not picky. They're like, we need to get in, figure this out. Like I said, become an admin and figure out what the lay of the land is and what credentials do I need to get to where, and then boom, lay the booby trap and leave, and then the ransomware hits. So that's why I think the teams really need to work together. and just think of different. It's an IP. It's not IT or OT. It's IP. Plus, there's technology systems that are business oriented, as far as SAP and all those other applications. And then there's HMIs, engineering workstations, PLCs, et cetera, that are hanging off that. But the rest of it, whatever, those are just the custom things hanging off of it. The rest of it's all the same. So they almost should have this, they should be, tied at the hip of, there's specialists for SAP in the IT world. There should be specialists for PLCs or engineering workstation or how to configure those. But still, those two, the other teams, the network core, kind of Windows networking team should just be tied at the hip as far as, hey, who's got the most experience with this? Educate us on how we can do that too, and feel comfortable putting in that patch or putting in Windows Firewall or putting in some segmentation, because you guys have already done it over here. So because really that's what it's going to get down to is, that's what we did back in 30 years ago. It was, we connected all these web servers to the internet, figured out people are eventually going to be mean and not just want to come to our website and just visit our stuff. They're going to try to attack it. It's like, shit, now we got to segment. And so that segmentation is just kind of whittling down to almost to the device level. And then, of course, we decided, let's do cloud. Let's put them all out back on the internet where anybody in the world can hit my OWA server, or anybody can hit my Azure server or my AWS server. It's like, hold on, didn't we learn this 30 years ago that just leaving it out to hang isn't going to end well if we don't put in some kind of controls? I just think of deja vu. I've talked about this previously. This, the cloud / hosted is just deja vu. It's all an IP network, right?
It's a new term for the same crap we've done before, right?
That's what I meant. Let's just rebrand it to cloud. That sounds sexier and doesn't sound like it's hosted, because we've been doing hosting for 20 years.
Right.
And people didn't really want to do it because security had enough gumption to say, hey guys, we already did that. We already had our web servers hanging out to dry, and guess what? Code red, NIM day hit. Yeah, that wasn't a fun day. So let's try not to do that again. But again, I don't mind. It's the new challenge of trying to figure out how to keep this secure and keep it running. But to me, I've seen this before, and it's like, let's try to use some of the known controls to control IP networks and ports and applications. And I think then we can get down to we'd all be on the same page versus us versus them, or these are different worlds, because I don't think that's going to solve it.
Yeah, and you hit something really, really important there, and I agree 100%, right? We have to do this together, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely differences in IT and OT. There's no doubt. There's intricacies, and I've seen it, again, because I've lived in both worlds. But there's definitely value in the knowledge that we have in the technology, in the IT side, and we need to be working. So I know, like, Idaho National Laboratory is working on the cyber-informed engineering, right? So they're looking at that, and how do we tie our control system engineers with and understanding the cyber. I spoke with Andrew Ginter a little bit earlier, and he said the way he described it is like it's two sides of the same coin. It's the cyber side and the engineering side. Like, we know how to design systems, but we also need to bring in the technology, the IT side, right? And part of that is it goes back to what we talked about before. It's those soft skills. I've been there and had to win over an OT person and win over a plant manager. And I didn't do it because I convinced them how smart I was. I didn't do it by convincing them they were stupid and I knew more than they did on this technology thing. I did it because I made them trust me. And how did I make them trust me? I built a relationship with them. I understood their perspective. I understood why they were concerned. I asked questions on where their issues were, touch the doll and where somebody hurt you in the past, right? Because most of these experiences came from an IT person came in, they said they had a plan, whatever they did broke my stuff, and now I don't trust them anymore, right? So we can't just do that again. We can't just take IT processes and cram them into OT and hope it works again, because just like you just said, with cloud, we've done this before, and they've done this before, and they're not going to do that again. They've been burned. They're not going to do it again. So we have to approach it differently. That doesn't mean we can say no and just ignore it and continue to keep OT and IT separate because we think that makes us better, because it's not. Like, it's not a long-term solution. We've got to get to a place where we're on the same team. we're your offense, I'm defense, or we're both, you're right guard and I'm left guard, but
Right.
we're both on the same team fighting the same goal. Like we're defending the power plant or the manufacturing facility or the train or whatever it is that we're protecting, but we're not enemies. We're on the same team fighting the bad guys, and they're over there. They're wearing a different uniform. We have the same uniform on, and we've
Right.
got to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah. So what I visualize when you say that is I'm always trying to come up with analogies, but there's the IoT things. But if to me it's if we made a new slogan, ITO, there's the information in a business, whether it be SAP, the financial information, the documents, the email, all the stuff that's really on an IT network, right? It's really information focused. And then the on the OT side, the operational, that's all the PLCs, engineering workstations. But what they both have in common is that technology.
Technology is
right?
the common.
So that it's almost like they don't realize it's almost like they're Siamese twins and they want to be a little bit different. But it's like, guys, you have so much in common. Just look in the mirror, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you guys would just tie it together and realize that you both have that underlying technology that they both are living off of, right? Is okay. Let's figure out how can we make those both. What lessons can we learn in both environments to be able to secure it? Like what I've told OT guys almost my entire career is, hey guys, if you put Windows Firewall on those engineering workstations, whatever you want, and you block these certain ports from the machines that don't need to talk to them, so they're not not your patch management system, whatever you need to talk to them, I won't bug you about patches again.
Right.
Because me as a threat actor, if I can't hit a port, I can't take advantage of a port. I can't
Right.
take advantage of if that's Windows XP or Windows Me. I can't take advantage of it, or if it's Windows 2022, right?
Right.
If I can't take so if we can put some of those controls, like I said, that I've been doing for 30 years on the internet, if we can get to that level where we can get some comfort of just getting some visibility into your environment, so you can see what talks to what and what really needs to talk to what, then we can kind of lower all this pressure of you got to patch.
Right.
It's let's patch the things that make an operational impact. Like the reason you're putting in this patch is because the system will go blue screen if somebody logs in this way.
Right.
That makes sense to me. You won't have to put it in because Bluekeep or the next named vulnerability, Bluekeep or Eternal Blue or whatever, comes out, and then it's like, okay, what do we do? You know what I mean? It's like, how quickly can we get them out now, even though we don't have the cadence of putting them out quickly. So it's just being able to tie at the hip and say, hey, we're Siamese twins. We have common ground. We have common objectives. We do have differences, but we also have a lot in common. So let's figure that out so we can leverage each other versus, like you said, have some bad memories of somebody who didn't know what they were doing coming in and trying to force something, and then it blew up, and now we just can't kind of get past that because that made a big impact in our world, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, that's what I try to talk about more when I'm called to make speak is let's find that common ground, because there is that underlying. I mean, there was a guy that just showed a slide at the last seminar I was at, not seminar, but conference, and he showed, okay, here's level 1 through level 5 that most people think of. And he says, this is IT and this is OT. He goes, nope, level 2 and above, that's pretty much IT technology.
Yep.
Right? It's Windows and VMware and Cisco and all those different IP-based solutions. That's level 2 and above. Level 1 is kind of the unique stuff to OT. And once we all realize that, we got to work together on those parts, because even IT has specialists for SAP and the home, the built-in or the company built applications.
Mm-hmm.
All those have specialists, so we can still have specialists over here, but we need the team that's doing the core to all be on the same page and working together to share that knowledge and share that experience. So we can do it right, and we can make sure cybersecurity has a seat at that table that says, okay, now let me validate what you guys did to make sure that the controls you want in place are actually blocking what we want it to block, and you guys will confirm it's allowing what you need it to allow. So I think we're going to get there. I think it just felt like I said, back in the day when there was the telecom guys and the the IT guys, and they kind of knew eventually there's only going to be one wiring closet. So eventually we're going to be in there together, and so let's find some common ground. So
the irony is I've been in those rooms where, you know, there's the IT rack next to the OT rack, and they're the same rack, and you open up the cabinets and they're almost the exact same gear inside of each of them, but the IT guy can't open. He doesn't have the key to the one on the OT side. It's just like, come on, guys. Like, okay, we're on the same team, and part of it, I get
that's Siamese racks, right? They almost look identical. Like you could put a mirror up and it's like, which one's yours?
Exactly. Let me blindfold you. I'm gonna take the labels off, and you tell me which is yours versus the other one.
And it's like, hold on, I didn't have mine in that order. That's the only reason. It's same ass gear for everything. So, I think, like I said, once that becomes more apparent that there's more common than not common, that I think the pressure will go down. That it's not a takeover; it's just a merger, right? That's what it was with IT and the telecom guys. It was a merger. You guys are still the specialist in your area. We're the specialist in the core network, and we have specialists for the applications. You know, everybody can then focus. Like I said, then people can focus instead of becoming a jack of all trades and saying, okay, hold on, I got to work on the engineering workstation today and try to figure that out. Oh no, this database over here that I'm not really an expert on. I got to figure out what. It's like, you know what I mean? That's got to be a high stress situation, right?
And up until now,
hesitant.
Yeah, and up until now, a lot of the OT, you know, you lean on your vendors up until now. So you're leaning on your control vendors, and you're hoping that they have the expertise. And up until now, like 20 years ago, they did have the expertise because it was all proprietary and it was one-off and custom. But now when they started bringing in commercially off-the-shelf equipment, when they started bringing in Cisco and Microsoft and all that type of stuff, these control vendors aren't experts either. Like, they started bringing in things they didn't know the impacts of.
Nobody on their team wrote it. Nobody on their team's patching it. No one's figuring out the next features. You're right. Nobody's testing it and installing it back and over.
Not to
and
the
over
level
and over
that
again.
it needs to be, at least, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't even think about that till you just said that, but you're right. Now they're kind of, hey, they've decided, okay, that's not our thing anymore. We'll let the, you know, Mother Nature take over. She says the strongest wins, and IP won the network battle. Windows pretty much won in most cases. A majority of servers. I mean, there's Unix out there too, but and you know, then there's virtual that's coming up. It's almost like that's just the wave, and it's trying to stay ahead of the wave. And I didn't even think about that. Even the vendors don't have, you know, do they have 20-year Windows veterans or 20-year, you know, Cisco or whatever the IP on their team that's coming to you, or is it, you know, that application? Right.
And most of the time when they're deploying it, the vendors will show up, and their field engineer that's deploying it is the control system guy. So he's the OT guy, but he's rolling out Active Directory and firewalls and all this other stuff that he's clicking a box and he's following a script. But when it doesn't work the way he expects it to, he doesn't know how to respond. He or she doesn't know how to respond. And I've seen it backfire in real time, in person, and seen the implication of that not going well and what that can do. So it's all the way up the chain.
Just made me nervous. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it happens.
It's like, yeah, because that's who's you know got their, you know, 24/7 365 contracts to maintain the entire environment, and they're like, the guy coming in is like, but I just know this application because this is what we built. But yeah, give me the booklet so I can run through the config. What's the default password? Okay, I'm going to enter that so I don't have to worry about if you guys call me in the middle of the night, I'll know what it is. I won't have to ask, or nobody else says it. So it's kind of you shouldn't have told me that.
Well, it really
now it makes sense.
It gets to the root of the problem. High level, we need to have a conglomerate within the organization, in each organization, that you have a big picture understanding of what's going on in my environment. Like, having an OT specialist is great, and you should maintain that. But you need to have somebody, you know, when the vendor is bringing in Active Directory, there's no way you can expect that OT guy to be an expert in it. So why don't you consult with your IT brethren that have an Active Directory expert and bring him in? Not to design it, not to tell them everything they're doing is wrong, but to say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you looked at that? Oh, we've seen that problem. This is why you don't do it that way. We should implement it this, and make suggestions. Same thing on firewalls, same thing on networking, same thing on VMware. Like, you have these entire teams of IT people. And if we start training and having this dialogue where they're brought to the table as advisors and not, hey, you own this and now you're responsible for it and you're gonna cram this configuration down the OT guy's throat, that's never going to work. But if you bring them in as advisors and say, hey, we're bringing in this vendor and they're bringing in Active Directory and VMware and Cisco and Palo Alto and XYZ. I want somebody from my representation on the IT side to sit in these meetings and ask questions. Ask the vendor, how are they configuring it? Make sure they're doing best practice. Make sure they're doing, they're checking the boxes and doing the configuration correct. They're not leaving default passwords. They're not, leaving vulnerabilities open that we know, you should be doing in normal baseline. You should lock down, turn this off on this device,
disable
this thing. Yeah, just the normal basic stuff we do on the IT side many times are missed on the OT side because nobody asks the question.
What you're saying just rings true to me, is like just looking at them as advisors, because it isn't that they're holding, and hopefully the OT, if they're listening to this, that they bring them in as advisors so they can hold the vendor accountable, not Correct. You guys. They're not there to point fingers at you guys. They're there to hold the vendor that's deploying this, that's selling you this and deploying it in your environment, holding them to asking them the right questions to see, are they giving me a base install that's left with a bunch of default passwords or default accounts that the threat actors already know what the hash is? Who knows? But always bring in somebody that's been there, done that can say, okay, here's the 5 things, or here's the top 10 I would recommend you, almost as a consultant. An in-house consultant, right? Right. Say, bring them in and say, hey, they're talking Active Directory, or they're talking VMware, or they're talking Fortinet, or they're talking these different tools. Do we have anybody in the organization, not just our team, anybody in the organization that's been there, done that with that, so they can come in and say, okay, you might not be able to tell us all the things we need to know, but at least tell us what should we not do. Like, right. What are the mistakes that have already been made? Let's not make those again. I mean, we do it all the time with cloud and all that, but let's not do that in our own organization. Let's let the world do it, but let's try to leverage somebody else who skinned their toes or skinned their knees, and so we don't have to do it again. They're not trying to take over territory. They're just trying to share their knowledge. It builds bonds between teams when the shit hits the fan. Then you can trust the other person because they were there to support you, to not hold you accountable, hold your vendor to a higher standard of, hey, deploy this right so we have a stable environment, because that's the ultimate goal of an OT environment is uptime. Yep. So let's do it right? Let's hold them accountable even more so than in the IT network, where there's a little bit more give on things, kind of coming and going or going offline for a little bit of time. So I like that idea of trying to figure out how we can look at other teams in the organization as advisors versus they're going to take over our territory, right? Well, and they're trying to hold the vendor accountable, not our own team.
Yeah, and one way I've seen that be successful in a few organizations, really advanced ones that I've been fortunate enough to be part of and help kind of advise, is almost like a service catalog. So the IT organization almost has a service catalog of options. Hey, these, we're really good at Active Directory and firewalls and networking, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, right? Right. And they almost, they budget. So usually the IT organizations have a bigger budget for technology, the T that we just talked about, being the same on I&O, but the OT side rarely has enough budget on that technology side. They're really good at operating the plants or manufacturing or whatever, but they don't ever have enough, in my experience, the O&M capital budget, all of it is lacking. So maybe the IT organization can start putting line items from staff, like, hey, we want you to spend 10% of your time. We want somebody from this team to spend 10% of their time advising on that side. So I want somebody from Active Directory and networking and firewall and kind of go down the list, right, and offer that as a service to your customer, who is the operational side, which is the reason the business is existing in most scenarios. And then you also you're not just coming with, hey, we're better than you, we're smarter than you. Hey, I'm coming with resources and maybe even some funding that can help you fund some. Hey, we were, we chose to go with the insecure option because, we had $100,000 and that bolt on those other things, it was 150. Well, what if we brought that extra 50 so we could do it the right way the first time, as well as bringing advisory? So we'll help you have those conversations, hold these vendors accountable, and do it right now as opposed to waiting. You're still going to own it. It's still going to be your baby. We're still going to just advise you. You have the ultimate say, but at least we're helping you because, again, it's all one team. We're going towards the same goal here. Then you're coming with more than, here's my T-shirt that says I'm from IT and I'm here to help. You're actually coming to help, and you have budget and you have resources, and that's something that people can get on board with.
Yeah, I agree. It's like I'm here to share whatever I have, resources, time, energy, knowledge. I'm here to share because because we all report to the same CEO. So we're all on the same team, whether we're on the offense, defense of some team. It's like we're not trying to take over your territory. We are trying to make the organization leverage all the knowledge the organization has to make the organization better and make it and more stable. I mean, that's, keep it running. I mean, no matter if it's IT or OT, we're trying to keep everything going forward productively. It's production is what we need to do as an organization. So let us, leverage us as just a free resource that you guys can use. In the organization I'm in, we try to go down there and at least monthly have team meetings and then go down whenever they want, any kind of consultation. So I've seen that in practice. And trying to build those teams and build the team, go to lunch together to build that camaraderie outside of just, inside conference rooms, right? But I think that also mentally, subconsciously helps build that team of we're all trying to do the same thing. It's just some people have more expertise in other areas, and let's leverage that because, I don't know if one day we install something that you guys have on your network, but I would be like, I have no idea. The first person I'm going to call is you guys, right? I mean, one of our vendors training vendors gave us a PLC, and I'm like, guys, I have no idea what to do with this now. You get it on the network, I'll try to hack the hell out of it, but I have no clue, and I'm not going to, that's above my pay grade or above my knowledge. So I want to leverage you guys. Can you guys tell me what I need to do? I think we just got to figure out how to get that word out that we're all on the same team. And what ties us together is the technology right now. Because it started whoever started the internet put a TCP/IP, they didn't know that it would eventually roll to all businesses across the world, right? It was really meant for organization like government and educational, so they could interact. And then it just took off, and it took out, countless, I wouldn't say countless, but multiple big organizations, Novell, Banyan Vines, that tried to build their own network, and nope, TCP/IP wins, but also means the threat actors know your environment. So be aware of that if they can get an IP on your network or get to an IP on your network, that's the challenge of that security's trying to solve. So.
Yeah, you're bringing back memories now from Novell, my Novell NetWare days. So I remember having to upgrade a system that had been running for, I want to say 3 years without ever rebooting, and it was a terrifying thing to upgrade to TCP/IP and reboot that machine and bring it offline and bring it back up. So that was a long weekend to get that thing back up and running.
I remember
it had never shut down in 3
we had
years.
A lot of long weekends when we were trying to move over to TCP/IP. We had Banyan Vines at the first corporate job that I had, and it was head above. It was very mature, but it wasn't what was on the internet, right? It wasn't going to connect us. And then it was almost like trying to manage two different environments. It's not efficient. Eventually, one will win, and it looks like IP won. So let's work together, right?
Yeah. One way that I've seen, and I know not everybody has this ability, but that I've seen be really successful in this space and being able to bring these two organizations together is building out a lab. So in a couple of organizations, I've built very large labs. And think about it like I've got my control system and all of the OT stuff, the OT stack, the firewalls, the VMware, like all of that. and it does a lot of things. Like, obviously I can test stuff, and I built like a deployment factory. So before we deployed technology in the power plant, we tested it in this space first, so everybody was comfortable with it. That's one of the concerns that a lot of the OT plant managers, et cetera, have. I don't know what this is going to do in my environment. Like, I want to make sure it's not going to break. Okay, if I had a representation of your environment and we test it there with your configuration, would you be comfortable? Yeah, absolutely. That'd make me feel better, right? So with that, but it also does a lot to bridge the gap between IT and OT and help the IT people. Yes, the technology's the same, but why is it different? And explain it in real time. Well, you can't do that here, and this is why. This is how we have to do it because of X, Y, Z, whatever those things are. Right. But also be a safe space to challenge. Well, why can't you do this? Like, well, why don't we try this? Because I'm not going to try that in production on a power plant or on a manufacturing facility or whatever that OT thing is while it's running. And I usually in an outage window, I'm not going to have time to do it. There's very limited time to do that, and I don't have time to play around. So if I have this safe space that I can try new things and I could test it without impacting production, without doing, and it's a real world example. It's not virtual where this thing is physical, this is virtual. It's not, it's almost a like for like. Right. The problem is it takes some money to set up. Somebody has to maintain it, et cetera. But it's taken a program that's taken years to get up and going, where you start getting instant credibility. When that plant manager walks in and he sees the same cabinets that he has in his environment, he sees the same gear, he sees the same screens that his operator screens are running, like the same graphics, everything about it, it's a duplication of what he has. And bringing in the IT people, bringing in the OT people, and it's really a training environment that you can play in a safe space, and it's done amazing things as far as building trust, training both sides, training the OT people on the IT stuff and the IT people on the OT stuff, right. And it's just a place that they can really mesh together. That it's hard to do on paper and just in a conversation, but seeing is believing.
Well, I think it also helps them. Even though everybody's talking the same language, native language, it gets them to really, okay, now I see what you meant when you said this. Right. Because now either the IT guys or the OT guys get to experience. It's like, okay, now this is why you're saying this is not as disruptive as you said. And now I understand exactly what device you're talking about, and now I know why you're concerned about it. Right. So I can't say too much on the thing, but there is a lab that I probably need to take more advantage of, get both more teams involved with, and maybe this was another one of those just weird kind of things in my life path that said, here's a nudge. So I'll take this as a to-do item that definitely is something to take advantage of. Because it not only it helps build knowledge in people's heads, it builds that camaraderie because you're actually working through problems together. Correct. Versus, hey, you're just going to advise me and I got to go solve the problem, right? And now the chances are I didn't ask the right questions and I still, somehow there was an outage. So it's like, no, now we have a safe place where you can ask all those questions and you can actually put it in place. So then those things that might have happened that you didn't take notes for or I didn't communicate well, then they got a chance that you could ask that question, I could communicate better, and you could take better notes, so you felt more comfortable, or you could do enough repetitions after I left to go do my day job in IT, right. and somebody could then do some repetitions to say, okay, let me see if I really got this down and I really feel comfortable with this. So yeah, I agree with you that a lab is while expensive, it's a really great tool to kind of not only build the experience but build those teams to make them mesh more as one, as we have specialists, but we have common ground, right? These are the things that are also in our IT environment. So
well, and it's like you said, it's breaking bread, right? It's one of my mentors told me a long time ago, all business is the people business. So the more that you can build relationships and you can build those connections, I don't care if you're the janitor or the CEO, it's the people business. So it's dealing with the person sitting across the table, not your differences, not that he's IT, you're OT, whatever those things are. You have to talk to the person on the person's level and build connections. Right. What do we have in common? What is the common language? Like what can we agree on? And then figure out where we differ, how we can come to a resolution or a solution that we can both agree on, right? And it really comes down to that. And this is a space, again, just like going and grabbing a beer, or going to lunch, or grabbing a coffee. This is a place I can do that while I'm doing. Hey, you can't do that in OT. Well, why not? Well, let's try it. Let's see what happens. Okay, try it. And then he'll say, yes, see, that's why you can't do that. Oh, okay. Now I understand why I can't do that.
Yeah, I'm thinking, what can ping do, right?
Exactly.
Here, watch. Ping this IP address in the lab and watch the lights and that thing go out. I was like,
exactly.
Okay, I got it now. Ping is not so safe. It's like now I have experience with it, so it isn't just this hypothetical that I heard of. I can actually remember, because experience is something that comes back, and you'll bring it back up, and it's like, I got it, guys. I won't even mention ping again, or whatever it was, right?
Right.
It's like it's the best way to kind of build that experience without blowing anything up or causing any kind of disruption. So
nobody wants to get the black star on their hard hat when they're at the power plant and they had to trip the unit. Like I don't want that. So
yeah, I agree. And I didn't think this podcast was going to make me want to have to-do list right here of the things I got to do now as action items out of a podcast. But thank you for making me have yet another to-do list. I appreciate it. I mean, I love the ideas. I love the thought of the advisor coming in as more as an advisor of like, hey, we're here to help you hold the vendor to a higher standard, right? Because the vendor reports is providing things to the company.
Yep.
So we're on your side. We're all on the same team to make sure that vendor is going to produce and leave what we really need in the condition that is really most advantageous for the company. You know what I mean? In the best condition it can be in, and we can ask the right questions because we've already had this vendor in, not this vendor, but like somebody deploying the same technology. It might have been a different reseller. But these are the things we held that reseller accountable for, because right now the vendor, we'll call it the solution provider that's providing the majority of the solution isn't Microsoft walking in the door to give you Active Directory. And it ain't probably a Cisco sales, well, it might be a Cisco sales guy, but it's most likely that vendor
vendor A
vendor A is also deploying that technology because it's needed, and they might not have the expertise of the original vendor. So I like that idea of coming in as the advisor, or that recommendation of, hey, we just want to keep the vendor honest and make sure they make it the most stable and secure that they can leave it, and it's operational. So we don't have to worry about trying to figure it out 6 months later. When we figured out, hey, they didn't deploy these patches and they left all these settings in Active Directory to default, and now we're already in production. So now what do we do, right?
And now we don't feel comfortable making changes because we don't know what impact it may have. So we're just going to leave it running.
Right, because apparently that vendor has never put in those settings, so they have no clue what will happen. So they'll say, if you make changes, it's no longer under warranty.
Exactly.
So it's like, no, we don't want them to say that. We want to hold them during the warranty period to deploy it correctly, so we don't have to bring you in again to reconfigure it. So,
well, and that's what my team was successful in doing. Like, so we do that in the factor acceptance test with the vendor, and I'd make them, hey, we're going to do it this way, and you're going to sign off on it before we leave this FAT. Yes, I'm signing off on the things that you're delivering, but you're also going to deliver these other things that I want, and we're doing it this way because I have to support this thing. Eventually, you're going to deliver it, and I have to support it after you leave, right? And I want you to sign on the dotted line that this configuration worked in your factory before you shipped it to my site, so you can't come back later and say, oh, well, we don't agree with that configuration. Like, no, you're going to do it, and we're all going to agree to it before we leave here.
Yeah, that seems like, again, I'm not been on the OT side as an actual employee, but it seems like that's part of the challenges. It seems like the vendors are very much, hey, we'll cut you off at the knees if you try to hold us accountable to something that we didn't control. Where they're not working, this sounds more like a vendor problem of the vendors not working like they're a partner or an advisor to the customer. They're like, this is what we know, this is how we deploy it, this is what you're getting. And if you do anything else differently, then it's on you. And it's like I'm assuming that most of those environments are damn expensive. It's like, hey, if I'm paying you this much money to deploy this stuff, you guys should be having rock stars on your team. You guys should have, IP, Cisco, Windows, and all those experts that show up alongside your application expert who's ratifying it, right?
Yep.
And instead of, it's just the guy doing this other stuff that he's not an expert, so he'll just leave it at default.
And it comes back to holding them accountable, because most of the vendors do have that. But if you don't ask for it, they don't send them. So they'll just send the field guy. They don't send the Cisco guy. They don't send the Active Directory guy. They don't send the OT guy. They just send the control guy. But
Oh,
if
wow.
you ask them, oh yeah, we've got those guys, there's an extra charge, and that's where that. Okay, well, I'd rather pay the 150 instead of 100 if I get that, because I want that, because that's what's going to help me long term. Yes, it's a more upfront, more cost, but long term, it's going to save me if I look at it that way.
Right. Yeah, I did. Yeah, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Get it done right early, because otherwise, trying to retrofit it in something that, uptime is the king. Yeah, I wouldn't want that responsibility. I mean, right now, all I got to deal with is criminals. So I mean, at least they're not knocking at my door 24. Well, they might be, but they're not getting in 24/7.
Correct.
That would be a very high pressure situation, knowing that the vendor kind of left me with that, and then now I'm kind of trying to balance of what do I need to do to get this more secure and stable, not stable, more secure without disrupting stability. What's the balance now? Well, we're already in production, so production is king.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Absolutely. Well, so we've talked a lot about today, a lot of different things, but in the next 5 to 10 years, what's one thing maybe coming up over the horizon that you're excited about that you see, and maybe what's one thing that's concerning that you may see coming up over the horizon?
Good question. So exciting. Sheesh. I wasn't ready for that question. I mean, I know I should have been ready for that question. I'm just excited at the opportunity for me personally. I'm excited at the opportunity of there's a lot more people of all different backgrounds that are focusing on getting into cyber. And personally, I've been doing the side education for free to get people into cyber. I think that's good for all. The biggest challenge is the biggest fear is this decision by the SEC to hold CISOs accountable for breaches. I mean, we didn't really get into too much of my background besides cyber, but I was a volunteer firefighter for 12 years. Like I said, I was going to go into law enforcement. Almost switched my career to go into medicine. But with all of those, I think of who are the first responders, and I can't imagine, and just the name that we say, we don't say first preventer, right? Like where did this expectation come that we're going, and I think I get a little bit of where it might have come from. There was this, it seemed like a lot more people that were not technical moved into CISO roles than the technology people or the hands-on people. And they were thinking that, hey, we'll just treat cyber like another risk, like a hurricane or a flood. And it's like, no. My background as a threat actor or paid pen tester is these are criminals.
Yeah.
You got to look at it a lot differently, that there's an active threat. This isn't risk. This is a threat. This is like the analogy I like to give is, I know everybody thinks that at any point in the time, my house could be robbed. But it's a whole different thing. That's a risk, right? So what do? I put an alarm system, I have guard dog, whatever. I mean, you know what I mean? I think that risk is manageable. But it's a whole different thing than the police knock on your door and say, Mr. Beebe, we have an insider to one of the organized crime rings in the area, and they have your address on their target list. That's a whole different. I'm going to be checking my windows a lot more. I'm going to be going to sleep a lot. I'll probably not sleep during the night. It's when there's an active criminal who wants to. It's like the fact that you think that, hey, like nobody holds fire chiefs responsible because there's fires in their neighborhood, right? It's their goal as a first responder is to minimize the damage. Yep. They already accept police officers. There's to minimize, try to catch the criminal before they do more crime. Right. Doctors aren't set up. Okay, doctor, if I don't live to be 100, it's on you, right? Right. It's like doctors don't become aware until there's other symptoms. So does cyber. And cyber, for some reason, this is my biggest concern in cyber, and I was part of it. So I'll take responsibility because I grew up through it. Is when did we decide to make the most junior person on cyber as the first responder? They're the ones that are supposed to analyze one alert kind of in a vacuum and decide which one to throw over the fence to the more senior people, where the senior people are more likely to say, oh, that one looks a little off. And they do it because of experience. And there's no real checks and balances for analysts. If they flag it as malicious or suspicious, it goes away like a help desk ticket. But the help desk tickets, the end user knows, hey, my computer still has an issue. I'll report it. The threat actor is not going to say, whoa, 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 you didn't catch me. You should have. I saw the ticket. Like there's, you know what I mean? There's with that kind of environment that the SEC doesn't seem to be paying aware of, is that it's very hard how we have it designed right now, deployed with junior analysts looking at the first ones to get a whiff of a potential threat. And they've never successfully hunted. Right? Most of them have probably never been involved with an actual incident. So how are they going to know what it looks like when they see it? I mean, at least doctors, they stand behind and shadow the other doctors for years of like, okay, here's all the symptoms for this patient. What's your recommendation? Yeah. We don't really shadow first responders in most organizations. I try to do it in my organization. But in most organizations, they're not shadowed, where everything they look at, every time they get an alert that they look at, somebody else takes a look at that alert and says, you probably should have escalated this one. So they start to see it. So I think that's my biggest concern is everybody's hoping that artificial intelligence and all these other things will take the load off, but I just see more alerts nowadays because we have more visibility. When I was doing pen testing 30 years ago, there were no alerts. So, I mean, when we got in networks, we were on everything. Yeah. I probably shouldn't say this, but the statute of limitations will say that we probably did once or twice run an exploit on a box and it killed it, right? Right. Because we didn't have anything to test on. We were getting exploits or building exploits kind of on the fly. There wasn't GitHub. There wasn't all these places where you can just find these tools. There wasn't Metasploit, but nobody saw anything. Yeah. Nowadays, we have so much more visibility, but it's a lot because of living off the land. There's a lot more false positives. So again, I think that's the biggest challenge going forward is how can we educate those that look at alerts until we get some other tool that looks at alerts and can really kind of sift through. Okay, this is odd for this environment, and that's what's most challenging because the threat actors now. They're not what I consider to be parasitic, where in the old days they'd kind of linger for months or years because they were sifting off data, and they were just parasitic. They didn't want to be disruptive. They didn't want to be caught. And the threat actors now eventually they want to be known so they can get the ransom. So that shrunk that time window significantly, and they're criminals. I mean, the other ones were almost like paid employees that had a long-term mission. These guys are just in it for the short-term money. Right. So they're almost like organized crime to where, if they have to shoot everybody in the house to get out alive, they'll do it. And these guys, if they have to burn down every Windows system in the environment, they'll do it. So it's a different threat level. And then we got this much shorter window, and we still have junior analysts that are the first ones to try to say that smoke is actually, that's white smoke or that's black smoke, that's actually this, it's not really that. Right. They just see smoke, go look at it, they look at it 15 times, well, smoke means this, it's always false positive, so every time I see smoke, it's like, no, you gotta, as a firefighter, you gotta look at the different, what direction is it, what's the density, what's the color, it's like, who's teaching them that? Yeah. And it's just, I think that's the biggest challenge is keeping up with the threat actors that are just more criminal than opportunistic as far as sifting off data so they can go build their own plant cheaper, right. In another foreign country. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. I was a little long-winded, but
absolutely no. Man, this was a great conversation. I think there was a lot of lessons learned here. I think there was, obviously you took away some things to go do some action items.
List. I got it right here. There's my to-do list. So I'm ready to continue learning. I think that's the most important part of anybody in cyber is if they have that mindset of it's not failure, it's I'm learning, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And if we can get that into the mindsets of the next generation, I think then we did what we needed to do.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, that's the focus of this podcast, is to get information out. If somebody learns one thing every time they hear this podcast or others like it, right, it's going to improve everybody. Like, rising tides raise all ships. Like, learn, be willing to change your perspective and listen to new information and look at it and be willing to suck at first as you're trying this new thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, anybody that's a professional football player probably sucked at it for a while. They probably got knocked on their tail. And like, okay, this isn't for me. The other guy's bigger. Well, eventually you might grow too. So
that's right.
Just stick with it.
That's right. Well, hey, Todd, I really appreciate you, sir. I really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks again for joining me.
Well, thanks for the invite, and thanks for the to-do list.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good one, sir.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the Protect OT Cybersecurity Podcast. If you got some valuable information from today's show, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Aaron and to get your free copy of the OT Cybersecurity Solution Buyer's Guide, go to industrialdefender.com. That's industrialdefender.com, or you can click the link in the show notes.